Okay, well, good afternoon. I'm Erin Reichert, and I have the privilege of leading this fine division where we develop vaccines and therapeutics. So I've been in this role for over 6 years now, and it has been a tremendously exciting 6 years. And to echo Dr. Han, it's your ideas that have allowed us to be very productive over the past 6 years. Yes, medical product development is very hard. It's expensive and it takes a long time. But we've been successful. We have delivered products. And in 2 years, presumably in 2021, I may be standing up here and we may have a licensed Ebola vaccine. We may have antivirals for the encephalitic alpha viruses, all because of your ideas. So our vision, we want to deliver medical products, vaccines and therapeutics that will eliminate the threat of all known and emerging biological threats. So we support the discovery, development, preclinical development, and clinical development of vaccines and therapeutics that will protect the warfighter and enable recovery following exposure to the biological threats, pathogens, and toxins. So my group, there's 2 teams, therapeutics and vaccines, but we also recognize that there's a lot of science that goes into development of vaccines and therapeutics. So we have another group that looks at supporting science. So these would be things like basic research, animal model development, stabilization technologies, and other technologies that can apply to both the vaccines and therapeutics products that we have in development. So we've recognized that the threat sphere is broad, and we know that focusing solely on priority threats increases the risk of surprise. And so we saw from the 2014 Ebola epidemic in West Africa that we have to have medical countermeasures in development for a long time prior to an outbreak. We can't afford to wait for something to happen before we develop a product. But we also recognize that being able to predict what the next epidemic will be is sometimes very difficult. And so our strategy will enable us to respond to both known and emerging threats by emphasizing broad spectrum solutions and platform technologies. And so while our top funding priorities for the near term will focus on known pathogens and the development of vaccine and therapeutic products for high priority pathogens and toxins, our goal is really to invest in products and technologies that can be quickly applied to unknown or emerging threats. So for example, host-directed therapies that might apply to a range of viruses that could easily be adapted for an emerging threat. Or different types of platforms for our prophylaxis systems, so inactivated virus production systems, or viral vectors, for example. So the goal here is to enable us to quickly leverage technologies and products that we have in development for our priority pathogens for known and emerging threats. Okay, so we're often asked, what are the types of products that you fund? And so within the Chem-Bio Defense Program, the end-to-end product development efforts for vaccines and therapeutics span 2 organizations. So us, the Joint Science and Technology Office, and the Joint Program Executive Office. So within my organization, we fund basic, applied, and advanced research, which correlates to the discovery, preclinical and early clinical development and evaluation of those products. Okay, so if you have a product that falls into that area, great, we want to hear from you. If you don't, we still want to hear from you because we oftentimes will fund label extension studies or repurposing efforts for products that are in later stages of development. This next slide is probably the most important slide in my opinion. Partnerships. Partnerships are key. There's no one government organization that has the resources to fund an entire end-to-end product development program. So we work very closely with our colleagues through the Public Health Emergency Medical Countermeasure Enterprise, or known as the FEMC, composed largely of BARDA and NIAID. And when there's requirements that overlap with those organizations, we have the opportunity to leverage those. Sometimes we have different priorities, though. So for example, NIAID works very much within developing products for Zika. But we still look at those products because there may be application for something that we're interested in. In addition to our colleagues at the Joint Program Executive Office, we also work very closely with BARDA as a transition partner. And many of the products that we funded in early development have transitioned to the program and are on their way to licensure. Within the therapeutics program, so there's a number of pathogens and toxins of interest, primarily the filoviruses, the encephalitic alpha viruses. We also fund the development of antibacterials for anthrax, tularemia, burkholderia, and plague. Within the toxin program, the therapeutics program is focused largely on the development of antitoxins for botulinum neurotoxin. Similar types of focus for our vaccine program. Vaccine programs, in addition to the pathogens that I mentioned for the therapeutics program, is also interested in a number of other types of toxins in addition to BOT. Okay, so in closing, we also have a power hour today. And so I think it's a great session. It's at 4:30 in Ballroom D, and it's focused on a program that we're calling CHEAT 525. It's a currently funded program, and it focuses on the development of rapid antibody-based therapeutics. So this session will provide an excellent example of how we're using platform technologies for known and emerging threats. It also shows how we collaborate with our partners in the international community, the intergovernmental community, academic and industry partners. So I hope that you'll join us.